This is Public-Private Partnerships, How to Accelerate the Geothermal Transition in Germany, moderated by Dr. André Deinhardt. Please, if the panel would care to take the stage.
August, thank you very much for the introduction of the panel. And we look to this panel a little bit different, or we start this panel a little bit different to the other panels. We start with two keynotes. First, a keynote by Halla, Hrund, Logadóttir. I hope it was right. Halla is Director General in the National Energy Authority of Iceland, and Halla earned a Master of Public Administration from Harvard, and prior to that she earned a Master of International Economics from the Fletcher School at Tufts University. And Halla is also the co-founder of the Arctic Initiative at the Harvard Kennedy School, where she now serves as Senior Fellow. Among her other roles, she is a co-founder of Girl for Girls nonprofit, a global mentorship that has the aim to arm young women with courage, vision, and skills needed to take on public leadership. The floor is yours, Halla.
Well, thank you so much, André, for this long introduction. And how fantastic it is to be with all of you and have the opportunity to actually dive into some of the important questions that we're all struggling with. You know, how to get from the beginning to the end of our energy transition. I have to start, you mentioned the Arctic. We had a speaker here from the Alfred Wegener Institute just before the lunch. And I have to say, I think it's such an incredible example, the work that Germany has done in the field of Arctic as an inspiration of what you can actually do as a nation. There you have Germany, that is not even a polar nation, that is leading the polar research. Do you know how jealous we are in Iceland? I can just tell you that, you know, we've all been looking at Germany's work in this field, and I listen regularly to stories. I have a cousin that worked on the Polar Stern, that ship that you operated, and she had the coolest job title in history. She was a polar bear guard. Beat that. I'd put that on my LinkedIn, and you know, in a heartbeat. Anyways, but we're not going to talk about Arctic issues directly, even though they're very much related to climate change impacts and so forth. We're here to talk about geothermal. And I was asked to kind of present the key figures, but guess what? You have already heard them. But I'm still going to repeat some parts and maybe just kind of, you know, we have been looking at the fact that Iceland has now 90% of its houses heated with geothermal. We've talked about the fact that, you know, this is a renewable source. This was a transition driven forward during a crisis, as we have now in Europe, during a crisis, an energy crisis that made us take these big steps. I think it's important to keep in mind that geothermal, it's not only about energy security, it's not only about climate change, but it's also a baseload source, right? And when we're now thinking about how to manage our new systems, having access to a baseload sources like geothermal can be an important part of the picture. So I think it's going to be very exciting for us to explore collaboration. As has been mentioned here before, we have completed 85% of our energy transition. That is because of decisions that were made decades ago. And I think that's so important to think about because it shows us how reliable this source is. We depend on it every day. And the infrastructure that was built during 61 and 83 with our energy fund that has been described here. We still have a path to go. And there, I think there is a huge potential when it comes to collaboration as well between Iceland and Germany, because we're looking into areas like offshore wind. And I had these excellent discussions with some colleagues during lunch here. Like, there's so much collaboration potential in areas where we know literally nothing. So we should try to think about strategic ways of collaborating in the energy perspective as whole. All right, so these are the goals that we've covered. But I read this incredible report written amongst others by one of my panelists, a co-panelist here this afternoon, about geothermal potential in Germany. If you haven't read this report, please do it this week. It's one of these must-reads because it really summarizes some of the key steps if Germany wants to take on this exciting journey. You know, you've gone to the Arctic, geothermal is pretty closer, you know. It summarizes also areas where we can collaborate. The policy lessons, you know, how it is a political decision, how we need to make sure that the funding is in place. That is a model where we can collaborate. We've gone through that transition. The tech and innovation. There's a lot of things, as we're going to be hearing as well, that has happened in Germany, a lot of lessons already, and some technology that is being developed. And we can collaborate not only on the implementation of the geothermal project with different experts that have been here this morning, but we can also talk about the different offsprings of these transitions. You know, we have carbon recycling. Where is carbon recycling? It's actually bigger than a person, but incredible offspring of this journey. We have Carbfix that is sitting here as well. I'm humanizing all these projects. No, but my point is that we have an opportunity to exchange and collaborate through these innovative projects that have been the output of the geothermal transition. And that leads to the third part here, which is the market. You know, the untold story in geothermal is like was discussed here by so many this morning. It's a communication issue. What is geothermal and what is it not? And it has so often been compared to the levelized cost of electricity. But as we've talked about this morning, the magic of the resource is the fact that you can use the hot water directly, and you can use the different streams from it for different things, you know, cosmetics, fish farming, all kind of things like the companies that I just mentioned here. So talking about how we can think about developing a market, it's something completely different than an electricity market, is an exciting part for us to talk about. And then, you know, knowledge, capacity, and training. It has also been mentioned here this morning. Here we have a long tradition in geothermal. Actually, quite a lot of students come to Iceland from Germany, and a lot of students go to master engineering in this country. But why don't we think about, you know, doing something more in this field? It all often starts with, you know, a young student that learned something and is eager to implement that. And I think we need some of that innovative spirit, because as we will talk about in the panel, the story of geothermal in Iceland is a story of entrepreneurship. And it's a story of successes, it's a story of failures, but it's a story of actually, you know, learning by doing. So, lovely to be with you, and I'm excited to continue the dialogue with co-panelists and learn something as well from our German counterparts, and see all the different ways that we can collaborate together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this impact, for this information. And now the next long introduction for Rolf Bracke. I think it's important to show who is here. It's important because it says something about you and how important it is. And the mentioned document, you show us some insights, have impact, and you can see it today in the Ministry of Economy. Professor Rolf Bracke is director of the Fraunhofer Institute for Energy and for Geothermal Systems, together with Professor Maya Rockwitz. Rolf previously, as founding director and chairman of the board, established the International Geothermal Center in Bochum as a joint research institute for science and industry. And also, he is full professor at the Ruhr University. He holds the chair for geothermal energy systems. The floor is yours, Rolf.
First of all, thank you very much for inviting us and for the organizers to have this great event. I also want to I'll give you some insights about what we have been written down last year in a roadmap on geothermal energy, and some of my colleagues are in this room. Ingo, you mentioned one of the main outcomes this morning when you told us that we would need something like several hundred thousands of people working in this industry if we want to ramp up and if we want to bring geothermal energy from more or less homeopathic uses to industrialized uses. So in order for our friends from Iceland to give you some ideas about the energy system in this country, the total energy demand in Germany is 2,700 terawatt hours per year, and the heating sector is more than 50%, 1,400 terawatt hours. This is 56-something%, and the majority of this heat is needed in metropolitan and urban areas. So there are a lot of towns, of big cities that are thinking about to step into geothermal. We have like 80 cities with more than 100,000 inhabitants. There are 600 small cities and towns with up to between 20,000 and 100,000 people, and 1,600 towns with up to 20,000 people. Imagine, this is a huge potential if we take this as a market. The majority of this urban heat is covered by fossils. We did not make this political investment and decision in 1961 to step into geothermal, but there was a political decision to step into natural gas infrastructure between the 60s and the 80s, and the majority of these cities are served by this source. So the transformation of urban district heating systems with 600 terawatt hours is a major market, and we would need a lot of people in this. The industry sector, another 600 terawatt hours per year. And we'd like to divide that. We had the discussion about high temperature, low temperature in the morning. Our definition is something like 200 degrees C. Above 200 degrees C, combustion processes from hydrogen and from biofuels will be necessary in the future, but below 200 degrees C, geothermal in combination with high temperature heat pump could become a major contributor. I just mentioned the real estate business. There have been a lot of investments into gas infrastructures, and this is a discussion that we are having right now. We also had the call that the geothermal industry needs to be louder. We need to communicate that there is a potential. The conventional gas industry is doing that. I mean, there are a lot of assets in the existing gas infrastructure, especially in the real estate business. So to transfer this requires major political decisions. And there is a fourth aspect which is related to a very special German part of the energy system. This is the old coal mining areas. So in the Ruhr area and Saar area and some parts in southeastern Germany, we are having a lot of subsurface infrastructure which can be used for geothermal by using the water from the coal mines, by using the coal mines, as heat sinks and as thermal buffers, as seasonal heat storage systems. So that's the situation that we are facing to. Another situation is this, and the question about how good do we know our subsurface. There have been thousands of deep wells being drilled from the 50s in the last century. The majority from the oil and gas industry, and in high seasons there were like 850,000 meters that have been drilled per year. So we know the subsurface very well in certain parts, in the majority of the parts of Germany. From drilling boreholes between 500 and 5,000 meters well, and Inga mentioned the Geotis project where you get all these information in detail. And you also get the information from the subsurface investigations from 2D and 3D seismic campaigns. And then there is another thing which we also have to address. This is the energy demand in regional areas. And what you will see is we know some areas we know very, very well. We have all the information from the subsurface, but there are also areas, especially urban and metropolitan areas, where the E&P industry has not been drilling. So, and where the data are pretty scarce. So this is something which brings the mayors and the decision makers of the small utilities in troubles. Imagine if you're a CEO of a utility that is serving this area or this area, so or in the western part or in the Frankfurt area, so areas where you do not have enough information from subsurface. You are not able to get the money from your bank for a decision. We already heard this in the morning, 20%, up to 20% of failure from boreholes in areas where you do not have enough information from the subsurface. So you won't get the money, you won't get insurance, and you won't get the go from your advisory board to realize such a project. So there is something like a problem that we have to solve politically. And that comes up, or we came out last year, my co-authors and myself, with some recommendations to roll out. There is a potential, which is somehow a bit of a glass bowl in the areas where we have all the boreholes, we are pretty sure, in others we're not so sure. So we came up with an estimation of 300 terawatt hours or 70 gigawatt hours of demand, plus surface geothermal, so down to 400 meters or a bit deeper, with another 600 terawatt hours, and the huge potential in underground heat storage, not only in the mines, but also in aquifer, thermal storage, and so on and so forth. And Ingo also mentioned the petrothermal systems, which is subject of major investigations, especially within Helmholtz and others. And this is also a huge potential for the future. So our policymakers should define clear expansion targets. And Mr. Habeck already told this in the morning. We expect to have something like a geothermal summit this year. But we would also need to have regulations. He told us about 2% for wind energy of the total area in Germany. We would also need something like this for geothermal. Then we would need a financial engineering tool. As I said, mayors in small towns or of small utilities, CEOs of small utilities would not get the money from their banks to realize such a project. So a risk mitigation tool like the Nordic Fund and KfW and USAID have been realizing in Latin America or in East Africa would also be a good tool that we would need here, beside exploration and drilling programs. Some key technologies like drilling and reservoir processes, borehole pumps, high-temperature heat pumps, and heat storage developments and cross-sector system integration is a topic that's necessary. And we need to look for people who will do this. And the potential is about up to 10 people per megawatt installed capacity. The oil and gas industry should be interested in this subject. I mean, this is a real industry with thousands of people, with a long history, with technology and with know-how. And so geothermal should also make friends with the old fossil colleagues. And of course, we heard already about this broad public relation activity with participatory opportunities on the more local sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rolf. Perhaps we can change the slides back. Yeah, I invite you all to the stage, also Tómas and Tómas. And now a short introduction for Tómas during you come to the stage. Tómas Sigurðsson have 2 degrees in civil engineering and planning from the Cornell University in the US and from Iceland. And he was for more than 16 years in Alcoa industry, and he was appointed CEO of Orka in January 2020. And Tómas Jahrfeld. Tómas Jahrfeld is head of geothermal project development at the Stadtwerke Munich, the municipality utilities company of Munich. And I want to start with questions to you, because this is very theoretic, as Rolf said. It's a good plan. I love plans. But you have to fulfill all these wishes. And if I look to Munich, what are the plans for Munich, Tómas?
Before I tell you what the plans are, I tell perhaps first what we do.
Yeah.
The experience now we have in Munich is over 20 years old. We are based in the Molasse Basin in the south of Bavaria, and we utilize geothermal energy a long time now. Sometimes politicians tell us we do research. What we do is real operation since 20 years to supply heat and also to generate electricity from geothermal resources. Referred to Munich, this means we have 6 plants, 3 geothermal plants for heat supply, 3 for electricity generation, and the plans are given by the goals we have. One goal is 2040, the goal for Stadtwerke München to be CO2 neutral. The city of Munich forces us a little bit to be quicker till 2025 to be CO2 neutral, and geothermal will play a decisive role in this transformation. And we will do it on the one hand by the utilization of own mining, of own geothermal rights, also by cooperations with partners from the industry or municipalities. We will repower our old geothermal sites with to a bigger thermal load. And the third is a little bit research we do. We want for the later for the later years, we want to have a seasonal storage, also to supply on the one hand to store waste heat and supply it in wintertime for peak loads. This is it in general. Of course, we know that this will be difficult to reach the goal 2040, because one project normally lasts between 8 up to 13 years. And if we calculate, we are in today's 2023, we are already in 2036. So the big task is to be quicker, to accelerate, to have easier and simplified methods for procedures and so on.
So it's very interesting and brings me to a question to Tómas from Iceland. How long it takes to install a geothermal plant in Iceland? Because we heard it's a very long process in Germany.
Yeah, well, thank you, and thanks for having us over here. It's been a really informative session today. Of course, it depends on how far you have advanced on your drilling, because traditionally we have not gone fast into implementation of geothermal power, because we want to understand the resource, you want to understand what you have. You can only do so much research on top, so you have to drill and test and so on. So if you take that into account, and then I'm using the experience from the high temperature areas, that can be, you know, somewhere between 5 to 8 years, taking all that into account. But if you have already done the research, I know you have a lot of wells already drilled, I saw that on Rolf's presentation, you have, it shouldn't take you more than 2 years if you know exactly what you have in the ground. And then I'm just speaking as an engineer, no administration process or anything like that.
Of course. Very interesting. And how works it, the collaboration with public partners? Because you're a private company, or
yes,
you represent a private company. How works? How you collaborate with, for example, with Halla?
Yeah, well, she is basically the energy authority. We get our licenses from her, and they monitor our progress, right, you know, and how we are treating the reservoir, and if we are managing our reservoir and our operations in a sustainable way. But in general, I think the example that's been given many times today about the fact that when Iceland, during the energy crisis in the 1973, we made a leap into geothermal. It was a political decision, and there was basically a fund available by the national government that eliminated a lot of risk for municipalities and private partners. I think that's a model that we can share. I think that worked very well. So for me, that's a good example of how public-private partnership could be involved, because geothermal has sort of reservations and doubts because of the risk associated with finding the resource. Helping to eliminate that risk is going to help everybody to move faster.
Very interesting. Halla, how the permitting works in Iceland? Working? Yes.
Yeah, it's working. Yeah, it's quite a long process, but you need permits for the research phase. Or first, it's actually like a master plan process that the parliament approves. Then you need, or you can have before that permits for the research phase, but then you need permits for the utilization period. And then if you want to produce electricity, you also need permits for that. So there is a strict permitting process. I wouldn't say that national energy authorities are always the most popular party in the energy transition, but we are really focusing on, of course, on making sure that the resources are used in a sustainable way, and that has been critical. You can see, you know, we've been using the same systems for a long time, and will now actually the government has just announced that they will be putting more incentives and investment into the same fund that helped us with the geothermal transition to help us to continue to explore and exploit this extremely valuable resource.
Very interesting. Thank you very much. Today we had a visit from the Minister of Economy and Climate and Energy of Germany, and parallel to our panel, he is in his ministry and speak with the press and explain that we will have in Germany also a risk mitigation fund, that we will have an exploration campaign, and that we want to foster this permitting processes. So it's perhaps something output from this event, I don't know. But as a question to you, Rolf, what do you expect? How long it takes to come really to upscaling geothermal in Germany?
Ooh. Well, if we see the timeline in the installation of LNG terminals in the Baltic Sea, and if political decision makers would see the same for geothermal, then I would be very optimistic. But if I see back to how geothermal projects have been realized politically and in the implementation phase in the past, I'm not so sure. So to my opinion, it's crucial to have this risk mitigation facility in place as soon as possible. And as soon as this is in place, I'm sensing that a lot of local utilities and energy companies will start. So 3 to 5 years.
3 to 5 years. So. Okay, thank you very much. Tómas from Munich. We heard that there is a huge interest, not only from the municipalities in new times, also from the industries. So, for example, from MTU or from BMW. There are some projects planned between Stadtwerke Munich and BMW or other big players.
Yes, generally speaking, companies are one of our clients which want heat for their consumption. BMW is only an example in this case,
of course.
But they of course now also have CO2 goals which have to be fulfilled, and additionally one decisive point has been not so recognized before. This is the consequence of the energy crisis, because now communities as well don't want to rely on gas no more. And if they have a domestic resource, of course they would like to use it. Stadtwerke München as well. We have a totally new speed in our decisions after evaluating geothermal energy as a energy that is secure, that is available. And before, 1 year ago, you know, we have some new plants, gas-fired plants in Munich. We concentrated on that. Geothermal was nice to have, but now it has a really decisive role. And 400 megawatt thermal have to be substituted by geothermal energy now, and this has to be accelerated now.
Thank you very much.
And concerning, sorry, André, and concerning companies, they really are interested now. We can offer them, or we could offer them more flexibility also in their supply, because on the one hand they can use the heat for their production, and the rest can be supplied into the local network for district heating.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And yeah, I have the feeling that we are in, I don't know if it's too big, but it's a new age for geothermal energy in Germany. It starts now, perhaps here. So I have a question, because this new age is passed in Iceland, more or less, regarding the cascading. We spoke together in advance, and you mentioned that this cascading of the use of geothermal is very interesting, also not only for your company, also for all the partners. Can you explain it, how it works?
Yes, happy to do so. I think the cascading uses of geothermal energy is a great example of how the circular economy should work. When you extract the fluid from 2.5 or 2 kilometers below the ground, it comes up as steam and brine, and the brine is used, of course, in heating, but it's also, in our case, used in one of the most popular tourist attractions in Iceland, which is the Blue Lagoon. It's so rich of silica that has been both used, for healthcare products, for cosmetics, and as well as a popular tourist place. Another example of cascading uses at the same location is CRI, Carbon Recycling International. They set up a research facility and then an operation where they were using our steam, electricity, hot and cold water and steam from the power plant to produce methanol, green methanol. And then the third example is that in one of our other power stations we use lava-filtered seawater, basically drill into the lava to get seawater to cool the turbines. That gives us 6,000 liters a second of 38 degrees hot sea. And there's an aquaculture farm that's producing fish, and we have another company coming in investing $450 million using that seawater to produce land-based salmon. So those are the type of cascading uses that we see in our case.
Wow, it sounds like a science fiction film. Cool. And yeah, if you have such projects, every time you need money, of course, we all want to invest. Do you think it helps to be public-private or private with public in with public shareholders to finance such projects?
Yes, absolutely, because it's about the risk, and if you have this this public-private partnership, that unfortunately, but history tells us that the private partners are usually better at handling risks that are such as construction risks and other risks, but you have the guarantee and the offtake of the public companies, and that combination has turned out to be very successful in multiple cases in infrastructure, and I think this could be the case here as well.
We're coming slowly to the end, and I will look to this to the topic, public-private partnership, how to accelerate. I think the most important part is how to accelerate geothermal transition in Germany. And I want to know from every one of you one point which you mean that is key to accelerate. I know it's not simple, but I want to start with Rolf.
I would say upstream. So one word, upstream. Portfolio management in upstream. So bring the 1,000 utilities together, the smaller utilities, and make a portfolio and start a risk management on that.
Okay. So, can I ask something to this statement? Yeah. Do you think this construct have to be part private and part public, or mostly public?
Well, in the very beginning, I believe that a more public institution would prepare the ground. So a national geothermal development company that is selling the boreholes to the different utilities would help a lot, I believe. I mean, we learned this from other countries. Plus, if we look to the large urban areas, so the Ruhr metropolitan area where I come from, 8 million people, 50 smaller and larger cities together, all of them are looking towards geothermal now, and none of them will be able to develop such a nice department like Stadtwerke München have been doing with 20 or 30 people. So join forces and develop your own business together with the portfolio in a larger area in order to share the risk. This is something which I would see. So first of all, prepare the market from the national side with perhaps with a national, either with the exploration campaign or with the national development company, plus starting a portfolio management in the upstream area with a lot of smaller companies coming together.
Thank you very much. Halla.
Yeah, the one big word. So I would maybe just kind of continue a bit where you left off to begin with and say that in Iceland, the district heating system, there's like a concession that is allocated to a municipality, and the concessions for the urban areas have to be majority owned by the municipality. So that's the public-private partnership kind of element in that story. But my word is seeing is believing. It's a sentence, actually. But I think if you look at Iceland's story, you know, it wasn't like the plan of doing everything like this. There was the first drilling in Reykjavik in the early 1900s, and it was used to heat a hospital, actually our national hospital, and used to heat like a public school. And then people started to say, okay, wow, this actually works. And then, you know, slowly by project by project, this journey that we tell the story of here today, you know, it happened through these steps. So I think it's actually very exciting to hear about your next steps, given the fact that, you know, it seems that you have done something successful and you have the opportunity to, you know, now use that case to scale. But definitely in Iceland, the municipality that was successful made the neighboring community jealous. So they had to do the same. So it's seeing is believing.
Yeah, I think in Germany it works on the same way. There is Erwin Knappek, it is the mayor of Unterhaching, and he was the first in the Munich area, outside of Munich, and all the other things. Oh, why it works in Unterhaching? I want also this way. Erwin. Okay.
Yeah, only one point is really difficult, but to come to your point, of course it is visibility to show what we do, to have public attention, but of course, like Rolf said, we are working on a portfolio. Actually, we have a break, we do nothing. We don't have a site where we drill, but we will start with all projects at the same time then. And this means that we develop patterns, how we can simplify processes internally and externally. That means also, Minister Habeck was here, that we need a framework that enables us to work quicker. We have a very complex legislation in Germany. We have long bidding procedures, and simplifying this, if we simplify this, we would win 2 or 3 years, I would say. And this would help us because it is the one half of another new project. So this is what I would wish if I could influence it.
You can. You are in.
I work on.
He is in the board of the German Geothermal Association, so he speaks from time to time to the minister. Tómas.
Well, I think you should try to create a win-win platform. Identify a community, and my friend here next to me is probably the one, where you know the probability of success is high. Implement faster, implement well, and then you will save gas, which is good for your industry and good for the climate. So create a win-win platform.
Thank you very much. I have to look to August. August, show me the numbers. We have 4 minutes left. Right? We can consider to watch a movie. Someone want to watch? No. Do we have a movie? We have a movie. Not Klubspadders, no. Or do you have questions to the panel? No questions. We can watch the movie. I like this movie really very much. So before I want to say thank you very much for the long journey and for the time in the panel.
Über die Hälfte unseres gesamten Energiebedarfs in Deutschland ist Heizenergie. Geothermie sieht man nicht und deswegen denkt man nicht an sie. Aber man kann, wenn man so nach vorne mal schaut und das Potenzial von geothermischer Energie im Untergrund sich anschaut, können wir über 40% des zukünftigen Wärmebedarfs durch geothermische Energie abdecken.
Ich kann mittlerweile mit dem System der Erdwärmepumpe aus 1 Kilowattstunde elektrischer Energie 4, teilweise 5 Kilowattstunden Wärmeenergie erzeugen. Und von daher ist es eine sehr, sehr saubere und eine sehr effiziente Energie. Seit ungefähr einem Jahr schießt die Nachfrage von erneuerbaren Heizungssystemen durch die Decke.
Wenn ich mir überlege, welche wunderbare Möglichkeiten wir haben, den Untergrund und die dort verfügbare Energie effizient dafür zu nutzen, Gebäude zu heizen, zu klimatisieren, dann ist das einfach eine unerschöpfliche Energiequelle, die es gilt in Zukunft anzuzapfen.
Da schenkt uns die Erde Energie für viele Generationen umsonst. Das ist ein so großartiges Potenzial, dass wir verrückt sind, wenn wir dieses Potenzial nicht heben, wenn wir dieses Potenzial nicht nutzen. Wenn ein Land wie Deutschland hochtechnologisch ausgerüstet ein reiches Land das nicht schafft, wer denn sonst?
Ich würde mir wünschen, dass die Geothermie flächendeckend in Deutschland als die dritte Säule der Energiewende anerkannt wird, dass sie den gleichen Stellenwert bekommt wie die anderen beiden, Wind und Solar. Und letztendlich, dass man die Verfahren, um Geothermie zu erschließen, so erleichtert, dass es wirklich zum Selbstläufer werden kann.
Around the world, countries are looking for greener alternatives to fulfill their climate commitments and reach energy independence. House heating accounts for 40% of global CO2 emissions. We must reduce heating emissions to reach our goals. In Iceland, where 90% of heating is geothermal, we save 3.7 million tons of CO2 annually compared to oil heating. That's nearly 11 tons saved per person every year. Geothermal resources are available all over the world. Even low-temperature areas are useful for district heating. Icelanders have been using geothermal energy for 100 years. We have the expertise and experience to help you reach your goals. Let us help you give back to the environment. Green by Iceland.